Discrimination will not be tolerated.
Yes, it is time for the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program. I'm Ken the Metal Professor. Mostly Metal has concluded, and now it's time to start talking wrestling. Why do I do this? Well, I love metal, and I love wrestling. And there you go. So I carve out a little bit of time in my 2-hour block pretty much every week to talk a little bit of wrestling. You know, I'm 50, and if I was 18 again and I like it enough, who knows, maybe I could go back in the time machine and try it out myself. But, at this point, the only thing I can do to help is try to support it and use my time on the microphone here to promote things. And I think there's a lot worth promoting, not just because I enjoy the spectacle of wrestling, but because a lot of the local promotions do a lot of good community work and philanthropic endeavors. And you'll hear a couple of examples of that. So sometimes, especially in the last few weeks, I actually am lucky enough to have guests in the studio to talk wrestling with me, some of the local performers or some of the local promoters. This week, Austin Fury was going to come in, and the poor guy had car trouble, so he wasn't able to make it, so I'm doing this solo. And so what I'm going to do is just take a step back and take advantage of the fact that I'm not going to run out of time with a guest here, because normally if there's a guest, we just start right into it at 9:30, and we're talking all the way till 10, and I don't have a lot of time to just share some logistics. So what I'm going to do is tell you real quick about how you can keep up with this stuff, because if you're still listening at this point and you haven't changed the station, then I'm guessing that either you just are so enamored by the dulcet tones of my voice that you can't turn away, or you might be a little interested in what you're hearing. On the other hand, if you're interested in wrestling, you're probably watching Backlash tonight and not listening to this at all. But this ends up on YouTube every week as well. So maybe somebody's listening to this later. So if you're interested in keeping up what's going on in the local wrestling scene, I consider that Northwest Indiana, thus the name of this show, the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program, but all of pretty much northern Indiana as well. So heavy activity in the South Bend area and going out to Warsaw. And that's pretty much the limit of anything I would do regularly. Just this past weekend, there was a show in Fort Wayne called Wrestling for Warriors. It was a fundraiser for similar to the Wounded Warrior Project, and maybe even for that specifically. An example of the philanthropic orientation of some wrestling events. And if I'd planned in advance, I might have driven out to Fort Wayne for that, but I wouldn't do that, every week or every other week. I am willing to go to South Bend every other week, and I'm certainly willing to go see shows in the immediate Valpo vicinity pretty frequently. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about this area is, Porter and Lake County, LaPorte County, and I think what's next, Stark County, and then out to Kosciuszko County, which is where Warsaw is. So anyway, if you want to keep up with this, the best way to try is to get on the Facebook feeds of all the different promotions, because they will promote their shows. I think we're well past the days where federations would have a very well kept, up to date website. Most of them have websites of one form or another, but they aren't necessarily current. Pro Wrestling King does a good job of keeping all of their upcoming shows listed on their website, but it's really hit or miss. And so Facebook seems to be the way to go. So you can go to Facebook and click like or follow, whatever you have to do on some of the local promotions to get their notices about what's coming up. And then also put a lot of the local wrestlers in your feed too, because they're gonna promote the shows that they are appearing on. One of the things that I've tried to do to help is build a little web page of my own. Now it's on WordPress, and so there is metalprofessor.com. See, easy to remember. And what you can do there is, well, first of all, you can find playlists from the partner show to this. So the 90 minutes before this, the Mostly Metal broadcast, every week is full of mostly heavy metal. And you can see my playlists all the way back to when I started back last August on that Mostly Metal link on metalprofessor.com. There's other links there where I exercise my list-making Joneses for movies I've seen and whatnot. Nobody cares about that. That's really just for me. But there's also a link on the left-hand menu for this program, NWIWRAP, and there you can click in to see an archive of past shows from 2016, and then also in 2017, what's coming up and what's already happened. So that's one way. And also, I have an nwirap@gmail.com email address. So if you know of anything that I haven't included, feel free to drop me a note. But also, I've created a Google Calendar at nwirap.com, and it should be public. And you can subscribe to it in your own calendar. And I try to keep what I hope are relatively accurate, up-to-date listings in the calendar of shows that are coming up. And so if you subscribe to that calendar, NWIWRAP, put it in your calendar, and then you will have notices in your calendar on weekends when there are shows coming up. And so it's a little easier to keep track, because there can be a lot of them, as you'll see here in just a second. So last week, Christopher Kent, CK1, was in the studio, and we talked for a bit about some of the activity of Fire Pro Wrestling and Acme Championship Wrestling, both which operate pretty close to Valpo. And so let's not look backwards too much, other than I'll just talk about the card that I went to see last night, Fire Pro Wrestling 134. So this card was held in Merrillville, so not a bad drive from here in Valpo. And they run at Impact Christian Church. It's on Broadway, 7071 Broadway in Merrillville, just a block or two north of, well, maybe a few blocks, but just a little bit north of Route 30. So it's easy to get to from here. They run in a church, so it's full for the church, but it's a relatively small crowd. And it's family friendly, which is kind of the idea. And you get to know the performers because it's the same people mostly week after week, and they're also people that perform in other groups like Acme Championship Wrestling. So just last night, it was a pretty short card, which you can tell when intermission happens half an hour after the show started. So the first match was Richie Rothschild, the Gypsy King, versus Fireball. Now, Fireball normally performs out in South Bend and farther east in Warsaw, so it was good to see him come a little bit west. And Richie Rothschild won that match with a what might be called a Stone Cold Stunner, I think. The second match was Nico Antonelli versus Jonas Keith. That one didn't last very long. Nico Antonelli came away with the win. And then the third match was a really good one. It was a three-way match between Adam Bueller, Johnny Motley, and Austin Fury, who was going to be my guest tonight. Didn't work out, but we're looking at maybe early June as a second makeup date for him. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'll announce it when he's going to come in. But it was a three-way match. Austin Fury is currently the Fire Pro Wrestling Impact champion, and that title was not up for grabs in this particular match. Adam Bueller ended up pinning. I'm sorry, Johnny Motley ended up pinning Adam Bueller while Austin Fury was out of the ring. Is a fun. Johnny Motley is a fan favorite. He gets good cheers, particularly from the ladies, because he is, I guess you could describe him as a looker. Long black hair. He's one of the muscular guys, not one of the flabby guys like I would be. And I've been trying to get my kids interested in going to see wrestling. If some of you have kids and you're fans and they've picked up on it right away, congratulations. I don't know what you did. But I've been trying to get my kids to go with me to these shows, and they're just not interested. One of my kids will watch it on TV with me, and she likes John Cena and Seth Rollins, folks like that. But she has no interest in going to the local show. So I tried to play the sex appeal card, right? So my older daughter said, I don't want to go see that. I don't want to see a bunch of sweaty fat guys in tights throwing each other around. And I said, well, they're not all sweaty and fat. Look at this one. He's actually in shape and pretty good looking, right? You could enjoy that. And she kind of looked at me and said, after she saw his picture, said, yeah, he's pretty hot, but he's not Arrow hot. So apparently she has a very high standard that if you don't look like Stephen Amell from Arrow, then the heck with you. I haven't told that to Johnny Motley yet. Maybe I'll send him a note, see what he thinks. Maybe he can convince her to come. But after those matches, Fire Pro Wrestling 134 intermission already came about half an hour into the show. So it was going to be a short one. After intermission, two guests of the show were in a tag team match, Dave Allen and CK1, who've both been here in the studio in WVLP. They took on Flash Harris and Stonehands Slater Wallace. CK1 and Dave Allen now call themselves the Gentlemen's Club. They're the elder elite of Fire Pro Wrestling, and they're not happy with these young people coming in and trying to take over, so they've got something to say about it. And they worked over Flash Harris for quite a long time. Stonehand Slater Wallace finally got tagged to come in, and he turns around and choke slams his own partner down to the mat, causing a heel turn for himself, turning into a bad guy, getting lots of boos from the crowd, getting some really heavy screams from people that take this a little too seriously, perhaps. But that's his job, is to get that kind of reaction. So that was pretty fun. So now the Gentlemen's Club has grown to 3. After that match, Nico Antonelli had not been happy with his earlier competition. He said he barely broke a sweat. So he threw out an open challenge, and Johnny Motley came back out. And I don't know if this was a planned match or a spur-of-the-moment match, because several of the fans in the audience had been chanting for Motley to do his super kick move, which he didn't do in his opening match. And so this match ended when Motley gave Nico Antonelli a super kick, and perhaps this was just to make the fans happy. After that, another friend of the show, Drex Odell, who's been in here, he was in a handicap match. He gave his tag team partner the night off, and Drex Odell took on the Bambino family. It was their first appearance at Fire Pro Wrestling. And they eventually won the numbers game and were able to pin Drex Odell. And I don't know what his tag team partner is going to think of that. He didn't lose the tag team belts because he was only wrestling by himself. But it has to hurt their ego a little bit, I suppose. At that point in the show, as normally happens at these shows, the pastor of Impact Christian Church uses this as kind of an outreach, and it's really cool because he doesn't come out and really try to pressure anybody. He just comes out and he says, "Look, I'm the pastor of this church. We'd really love to have you guys here this Sunday. Here's what's going on. Thanks for coming." And he pointed out during this piece of the show last night that the special series going on was in the sermons and in the services was a series on coping with anger. And I thought it was kind of ironic that he brought up that particular series when he was talking about this to a professional wrestling crowd. The main event for the night was Jeremy Hadley against Tank. I guess Tank has been in Fire Pro Wrestling before, but it's been a while. If you've listened to the show a lot, you've heard his name quite a lot because he appears all over the place. But again, mostly east of here in the South Bend and Warsaw area. Tank is a large dude, and Jeremy Hadley is quick and agile, but he's not large. So this was an interesting kind of big guy, little guy match, which Jeremy Hadley ended up winning with a big frog splash onto Tank. And then after that match, Tank left the ring, and the Gentlemen's Club came back out and laid into Jeremy Hadley, took out the 2 referees, and just had their way with everybody. So the Gentlemen's Club has established themselves as a force to be reckoned with, as they say. So the next Fire Pro event is coming up in a month. They always operate the 3rd Saturday of the month, so June 17th. They'll be back for Fire Pro 135 at Impact Christian Church. Okay, so here's a rundown of some of the other shows that are coming up pretty soon in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Next weekend is Memorial Day weekend, and I'm pretty sure nobody's dumb enough to try to run a show then. So I don't know of any shows in this area happening until Saturday, June 3rd. On Saturday, June 3rd, Acme Championship Wrestling will be having a fundraiser for the Kankakee Valley Pop Warner Club. Their event is at the Kankakee Valley High School at 6:30 Central Time. So that's a couple of Saturdays from now. The main event of that is Drex Odell versus Austin Fury in a ladder match for the ACW title, which Austin Fury currently holds. I was hoping that Austin would tell us a little bit about what he expects out of that match, but he wasn't able to make it. The next possible date for him to come here, I think, is going to be that Sunday, June 4th. So assuming he survives a meeting with Drex Odell, perhaps he'll come in and talk about that match after the fact, and we'll see whether he's still holding on to the title. But as I mentioned before, a lot of the local groups do fundraisers, and there's an example. It's a fundraiser for the Kankakee Valley Pop Warner Club. On Saturday, June 10th, that's going to be a busy weekend, Defied Wrestling, which operates in Warsaw. Now, we are talking about an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half east of here, which is the extent of my comfort zone for driving for one of these things. They're doing an event called Heat Wave at the Kosciuszko County Fairgrounds. That's a pretty cool place to see an event, and they've advertised this as the last FWF show that will be held at the fairgrounds. So either they are wrapping up operations entirely, or at least they're going to change venues. I'm not exactly sure, but that will be Saturday, June 10th. Sunday, June 11th. Now, this sounds like a fun one, and I just learned about this afternoon. This is going to be an outdoor show in the afternoon in Hammond, which, as long as it's not 95 degrees out, should be pretty cool. Again, Sunday, June 11th. This is ARW Pro, Adrenaline Ringside Wrestling. People from that group have visited the studio here at WVLP. The main promoter, Joey Boom Boom, was here. I guess you would call it the current somewhat owner, King Bishop, was here talking about that, but it's been a while since they were in. But ARW Pro live in the Ville. So this is the Hessville area, at least postal wise is in Hammond, but more accurately known as Hessville, I guess. This is an outdoor event, 6817 Kennedy Avenue in Hammond, at a place called the Tattoo Lady, or at least they're the ones sponsoring it. It looks like what's going on is this is a much larger event during the day in Hessville. They're going to have food trucks, vendors, a car show, a pinup girl contest at the car show, and this wrestling card will be part of all that. So if you want to go out and watch some good wrestling and eat some yummy food out of the food trucks, then check this out. So again, that'll be Sunday, June 11th at 2 p.m. in Hammond, Indiana, ARW Pro live and outdoors. And at the risk of repeating myself, this is a lot to keep up with, so check out metalprofessor.com, look for the NWIWRAP link, and scroll through these events. In fact, I'm reading that screen right now. That's how I can keep all this straight. Or pull up the NWIWRAP@gmail.com Google Calendar into your own, and you'll see some of these things placed into your own dates in your calendar. Friday, June 16th, Pro Wrestling King has an event called A Sudden Impact on Skull Island. And that's going to be in Bourbon, Indiana at the Bourbon Park Pavilion. That's another nice outdoors, roofed but outdoorish place to see a show. There is so much stuff going on in that title, I don't even know where to begin. Okay? A Sudden Impact. Well, the reason Impact is there is that two of the special guests are going to be Congo Kong and Robbie E. Both of those guys are currently appearing on Impact Wrestling on television, on Pop. What's the name of that channel? Pop. I don't even remember. You can catch the episodes on Daily Motion as well. It's on right before Schitt's Creek on the Pop. Yeah, Pop is what it's called. But anyway, A Sudden Impact, because there are two stars from Impact Wrestling who will be on hand. One of them's name is Congo Kong. He performs in this area a lot. Kong, Skull Island. Yeah, you see what's going on there. So A Sudden Impact on Skull Island. That was well done in the naming part of the card there. That's June 16th. June 17th, the same company, PWK, is holding Legend of the Sword. Now, that title makes sense because they've had a sequence of shows over the last couple of months. One was called Camelot. One was called Sir Lancelot recently. That was at a high school whose mascot was the Lancers, so that made sense. So there's this whole King Arthur theme going on here, and I don't know why, but they're going with it, and so we will too. So Pro Wrestling King is actually pulling a doubleheader at Bourbon Park Pavilion next weekend, and I'm not sure how that works out scheduling-wise for them or why they're doing it. But hey, double your fun with wrestling 2 nights in a row. That same night, Saturday, June 17th, if you don't want to drive all the way to Bourbon, which is about an hour away from here towards South Bend, you can go visit Fire Pro 135, as I just ran down a while ago. That will be at Impact Christian Church in Merrillville. And then I don't have any events found and discovered for the later portion of June. So I know of cards on June 3rd, 10th, 11th, 16th, 2 of them on the 17th, filling up the first half of June. And then I haven't seen yet anything after that for the rest of June or early July. The next thing I know about in this region is July 15th. That will be Revolution Championship Wrestling. They're doing their 10th annual Slam Cancer Benefit Show, and that's going to be at the Battelle Center in Mishawaka, Indiana. And there you go with the fundraising and philanthropy again. It's a good reason to support these guys. And then Saturday, July 22nd, will be an event called When Worlds Collide 4. That will be at the Century Center in downtown South Bend. And that is a combined effort between Revolution Championship Wrestling, Pro Wrestling King, and Strong Style Wrestling, when all 3 of the groups come together with their biggest stars and they let her rip and have a big show. This will be the 4th one of those. They also bring in a lot of special guest stars. You'll see people from WWE or ex-WWE or maybe some Impact folks, definitely some folks that you would see on places like Lucha Underground or otherwise on the independent circuit. So I believe Leo Rush is going to be there. He's big on the independent scene. I think Matt O'Hare. Wait, that's not his name. Oh shoot, I'm drawing a blank because I don't have the promo thing, and I'm embarrassed now because he's like my favorite wrestler in Lucha Underground. Matt Cross. There we go. Matt Cross from Lucha Underground. He wrestles as oh my goodness. Lucha Underground hasn't been on the air for a while because they're taking a break in between halves of their seasons. Son of Havoc. There we go. I knew it would come to me. He's one of my favorites. He's going to be on that card. So if you're only going to go to like one wrestling show in this entire area in the next several months, that might be the one I would pick because it's gonna have lots of the best folks from the region as well as some really attraction type folks from other federations or other independent scenes that are coming in here as guests. So that's what I've got for you here on the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program. A little quick episode just to catch our breath and figure out what's coming up soon. I'm not sure what's going to happen next week for this show or even Mostly Metal next weekend for Memorial Day. But hopefully the week after that, June 4th, we'll be able to recap the Acme Championship Wrestling show that will have happened the night before on Saturday, June 3rd. So if you're looking for something coming up quick, that's the one to keep in mind. Again, Acme Championship Wrestling, Saturday, June 3rd at 6:30 p.m. at Kankakee Valley High School. It's a fundraiser for the Kankakee Valley Pop Warner organization. The main event is Drex Odell versus Austin Fury in a ladder match for the ACW title. And I don't know who to root for because Drex Odell has been in the studio before. He's a friend of the show, and Austin Fury was supposed to come tonight. Hopefully he will be able to show up perhaps on Sunday, June 4th. Right after that show. But that about wraps it up. It's almost 10 o'clock here, and I'm Ken the Metal Professor. Thanks for hanging in there while I did this monologue for the last 20 or 25 minutes. I'm going to go away and sip what's left of my Starbucks iced coffee. Yes, I'm drinking that almost at 10 o'clock at night. And now I'm going to turn the programming over to a replay of Punk Rock Radio.